The sun on Novskaya wasn't like Earth's. It filtered through the leaves in soft, gold-blue hues, casting spiraled shadows that danced over Johnny Vanjik's face as he leaned against the trunk of a white-barked tree. The soil beneath him pulsed faintly. Microbial symbiosis, the scientists called it. But to him, it just felt alive. Everything here lived without apology. 15 now. He had grown taller, wirier. The vault suit had long since been traded for woven fabrics, native to this world. His hands were calloused from farming work, his shoes dusted with the strange pollen of flowering roots that grew in hexagonal clusters. He stared up into the canopy, lips parting just slightly. This place is beautiful. No one was around to hear it. No one had to be. It was the first time in years he felt no weight on his chest when he breathed. His past hadn't left him. He still dreamt of sirens echoing in sealed halls, of voices calling through static, of cold airlocks creaking open into space. But out here, under this alien sun, those memories dulled like distant thunder. And yet, he could feel it. A presence. Not malicious. Not even intrusive. Just watching. Back on New Atlantis, Constellation kept the artifact sealed. Understudy. Protected. They promised it was safe, inert, stable. But some nights Johnny swore he could still hear it calling. Not with sound. With absence. Like it missed him. Like something inside it knew what he had survived. He laid his head back against the bark and closed his eyes. The wind whispered through the branches. And beneath that whisper, a pulse. Faint. Low. Matching the rhythm of his own heart. He hadn't told anyone. Not Noel. Not Mateo. Not even Sarah, who'd sat with him in the first days after Earth, the days he barely spoke, barely ate. He trusted them, sure. But this was different. Lately, it had started again. Subtle at first. A pressure behind the eyes. A hum just beneath silence. Like his bones remembered a song his ears couldn't hear. And every day, it got stronger. Even now, across light years, across gravity wells and comm relays, he could feel it. Like the artifact was right there, just out of reach. A whisper brushing the edge of thought. You're not done. That's what it felt like. Not in words. In sensation. Not a message. A summons. He'd wake at night, heartbeat thundering like the old vault klaxons. Sometimes he'd jolt upright with tears in his eyes and not know why. Other times he'd find himself walking, barefoot in the Novskaya dawn, tracing symbols into the dirt that vanished with the wind. And then there were the dreams. Not memories. Not visions. Something deeper. Impossible geometry. Planets spinning in reverse. Eyes without bodies, watching from somewhere between thought and math. A will of stone and light, assembling in places that shouldn't exist. He'd told himself it was trauma, that it was just echoes of the vault, of his family, of airlocks screaming open. But deep down, he knew better. The artifact was calling him. Still. And the truth of it? It had never really stopped. The dream didn't begin with light. It began with weight. A pressure deep in his chest, as though the planet itself had taken hold of his lungs and refused to let go. He gasped in his sleep, but no air came. Not here. Not in this place. Novskaya spread out before him not as it looked by day, but as it truly was. The trees bent backwards, their branches twitching like antennae. The rivers flowed uphill, then sideways, then cracked apart into floating shards of water that still somehow ran. Above, the stars blinked, flickering in and out of alignment, forming symbols he couldn't read but felt in his bones. A language older than language. Then the ground began to move. Not shake. Pulse. Like a heart. He fell to his knees, no longer dreaming in the world, but as it. He was Novskaya, and Novskaya was screaming. The scream wasn't pain. It wasn't warning. It was summoning. And from beneath the crust, somewhere far below roots and magma, came a glow. Dim at first, then searing. A slow emergence of angles that shouldn't exist. A structure that shifted even as he looked at it, refusing to stay in one form. It was an artifact. Not the artifact, but kin. A sibling. A shard of the same broken crown that had saved his life all those years ago. It turned slowly in the dream, turning without motion, burning without flame, and as it faced him, a soundless voice filled his skull. The others are waking. We are not buried. We are planted. Then silence. Then impact. He jolted awake, heart hammering like it had back in Vault 717 when the alarms first failed. It was still night. But out there, past the trees, just beyond the ridge, a faint glow. From the ground. He didn't hesitate. Slipping on his boots and grabbing the weather cloak the colonists had given him, Johnny moved through the sleeping camp in silence. The colony's soft perimeter lights flickered lazily, casting long, finger-like shadows across the dirt paths. He ignored them. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, on the ridge beyond the biogardens where the glow had just begun to rise. Each step felt heavier, but not from fatigue. It was gravity. Real gravity. But not from the planet. Something beneath the surface was pulling on him, on everything. Like the artifact he once held had awakened in kindred response. It was like being remembered by something he'd never met. The forest didn't seem right tonight. Novskaya's trees always sang in the wind, their symbiotic leaves brushing against one another with a soft, harmonic buzz. But now they were silent. Motionless. As if holding their breath. Even the chirping nocturnals had gone still, buried in their burrows or watching him pass from the black limbs above. He reached the ridge. The glow had intensified, but not like a flame. It shimmered through the soil in pulses, geometric and patterned. As if the light wasn't shining outward, but inward, folding into itself in precise cycles. Like a circuit being drawn by a divine hand beneath the crust. He dropped to his knees and ran his palm across the earth. Warm. Not just from planetary heat, but willed warmth. Intentional. Like the planet itself was alive, or had become the nerve ending of something else entirely. The moment he touched it, his mind snapped inward. He saw 1,000 faces. Not human. Not dead, either. Not in the way he understood. He saw vaults, not just his. Not just 42. He saw broken doors, charred bones, preserved screams. But he also saw others sealed still. Ones never listed in any vault tech archive. Ones shaped like no vault should be, sunken deep into mountainsides or ocean floors or crater walls on moons not charted by the UC. And he saw one on this world. Not the glow. Not the shard below. A vault. Buried. Unopened. Not alone. Johnny gasped and ripped his hand away. The earth beneath his palm had cracked. Not wide. Just enough for breath to escape. Not air. Breath. As if the planet sighed. He staggered back just as a voice called from behind him. Johnny. It was one of the colonists, Mari, from the hydroponics team. Her boots crunched soft soil as she jogged up the ridge, her expression creased with concern. What are you doing out? She stopped. She saw the glow. She saw the fissure. Johnny didn't speak. Couldn't. He turned to her slowly, eyes wide, not with fear. Not with wonder. With recognition. It's not over, he whispered. They're waking up. Mari blinked. Who's waking? The ground shook. Just once. A deep, low thud, like a god knocking from beneath the floor of the world. And then, on the far horizon, a second glow. This one not soft. Not quiet. White. Towering. Rising. Like something mechanical had just stood up. Or emerged. Mari backed away. Johnny stepped forward. The dream was no longer a dream. And Novoskaya was no longer just a refuge. It was a cradle. And something was ready to be born. The soil parted for him. It didn't chatter, didn't resist, it receded, as though his hand bore some ancient right to reclaim what was never truly buried. As his fingers pressed into the luminous fissure, the warmth intensified. Not burning, but welcoming, like a fever dream given shape. The earth around his hand curled away in fractal spirals, and for a moment, time blurred. He saw, or rather, felt the stars slow. The wind hold its breath. Even Mari behind him seemed frozen, mouth half open, eyes locked on him in horror or awe, he couldn't tell which. And then it emerged. Not metal. Not stone. Not any substance Johnny could name. The second artifact rose from the earth like it had always belonged to him. No, not to him. To what he was becoming. It didn't look like the one from Vault 717, not exactly. This one had edges that curved inward, a pale sheen like bone polished over centuries. It spun in his hand not by motion, but by intention, reacting to every flicker of his thought. Symbols moved along its surface in impossible geometries, not etched, but alive. The moment it touched his palm fully, the world around him vanished. He stood in darkness. Not absence. A presence of dark. Thick. Humming. Sentient. Before him, a vast chamber, constructed of the same impossible alloy, stretching beyond the horizon. Lined with massive obsidian rings, each orbiting something hidden at the center. And he heard voices. Not words. Ideas. Breath has returned to the silent systems. Signal recognized. Form incomplete. Integration required. You were not meant to be alone. You are not the first, Johnny Vanjik. The name hit him like a shiver. Not because it was spoken, but because it was understood. He tried to speak but had no mouth here. He thought and the chamber responded. What are you? What is this place? A fraction. A memory of the mechanism that moved the stars before time was given a name. You opened a door. Now others will follow. The artifact pulsed in his hand. The rings above him began to align. And the void whispered again. The sleeper awakens. Then, with a snap, he was back. Mari was on the ground, wide-eyed, breathing hard. The soil had blackened around them in a perfect circle. Johnny stood alone at the center, holding the artifact. It no longer glowed, but he did. A faint shimmer, barely visible in the dark. Not light. Not fire. Resonance. Behind him, the distant horizon cracked with another beam of white energy like the one they'd seen moments before. Only now there were three. The planet was calling. And the artifacts were answering. Johnny looked to the stars. Then to Mari. We need to warn them, he said, voice quiet, steady. Constellation. The UC. All of them. Novoskaya isn't just a world we found. He turned the artifact in his hand. It's one that found us. The following morning, the sky had changed. Johnny stood atop the ridge above the colony outskirts, wind tooling his hair, the artifact slung in a wrap across his chest like a phantom heart. Where once Novoskaya's sky was a smooth, unbroken tapestry of pale gold clouds and teal light, it now shimmered with subtle fractures like something just beneath the surface was pressing outward. And overhead, she had returned. the eye of the universe. Constellation's flagship. Her crescent silhouette hung in low orbit, engines pulsing softly as a shuttle broke off from her belly and burned its way down through atmosphere. Sleek, bird-like, black against the morning sun, it veered with precision toward the clearing near the governor's dome. The colony stirred. Children stopped in their tracks, workers dropped tools. Soldiers straightened up like old memories were waking in their bones. Every eye on Novskaya seemed to tilt upward in unison, drawn by some instinct deeper than blood. Constellation had come. The shuttle's retro thrusters engaged with a hiss of blue flame, touching down in a controlled tremor of dust and kinetic grace. Johnny didn't wait. He was already walking, boots crunching dry grass, Mari beside him in silent support. Her rifle was slung but unchanged, arged. She'd seen enough last night to know what followed Johnny now wasn't something a bullet could stop. The shuttle's ramp extended with a smooth hiss, revealing familiar figures. Sarah Morgan stepped forward first, her eyes hard, posture stiff as steel, but her voice gentled the moment she saw him. "You sent the signal." "I didn't," Johnny said, shaking his head. "It did." He unclasped the wrap and let the artifact drop into view. It was inert again, but somehow heavier than before. Behind Sarah, Barrett descended with a haunted look already forming on his face. "Kid," he breathed, "that thing shouldn't exist. Not here. Not again." Andrija stepped off next, scanning the horizon like she expected the soil to bite. Samko stood back but kept a hand on his belt. Even Walter Stroud made the trip his usual corporate Polish, dulled by unease. Sarah motioned them toward the shuttle. "We need to talk. And not down here." Johnny nodded once. "There's more." She raised a brow. "More than a living planet screaming in dreams and a second artifact." He looked to the sky. 3 signals. 1 dream. And a voice that called me the sleeper. "You tell me what that means." In orbit, aboard the eye, the tone shifted quickly. Scans were already confirming what Johnny had felt: 3 separate energy signatures, each resonating in near-perfect synchronicity across the planet's crust. It wasn't geological. It wasn't magnetic. It was something older. Artifacts. Or fragments. Or worse, calls to something deeper still. In the eye's core chamber, as Constellation gathered around a holographic table, Johnny standing silent with the artifact on the edge like a keystone out of place, they watched in real time as Novskaya mapped itself out. Beneath every mountain range, under every inland sea, wounds. Spiraling vector lines that weren't natural. Not carved. Not tectonic. Constructed. Sarah's voice dropped low. This planet was grown. Barrett leaned back, eyes wide. Not just terraformed. Coded. Like it was seeded to be fertile ground for something waiting. Mari, who had insisted on joining, said what none of them wanted to say. waiting for him. Johnny clenched his jaw. He didn't feel like a prophet or a savior. He felt trapped. Then, the artifact began to hum. All lights in the IS map room dimmed. The stars vanished from the holographic globe, replaced by a single spiraling image. The system. The stars. The orbit lines. They folded in on themselves. Then re-expanded. New symbols appeared in deep red. Sarah backed away from the console. "It's not just this planet," she whispered. "It's the whole system." And somewhere, below them, Novoskaya pulsed again. Alive. Watching. Listening. And not alone. Johnny stared at the map, red spirals etched into the air like arteries through a corpse. His voice came slow, uneven. Not afraid, but something worse, remembering. "I could be wrong," he murmured, half to himself. After all, Earth was 300 years behind in the science department by the time we died down there. Constellation turned to him. Sarah raised a brow. Barrett stopped mid-note on his pad. No one interrupted. Johnny stepped forward, gaze locked on the spiral's harsh geometry, jagged branches, recursive folds, spikes that jutted like claws from its core. But that spiral. It's not natural. It's chaotic. Spiky, like veins branching out. But it's a spiral. He lifted his hand slowly, tracing the air as if seeing it fresh. And spirals are infinite. Their center becomes their outer. Over and over again. A pause. Then his eyes flicked to Sarah. It's not a map. Not of space. Not just of the system. He looked down. Swallowed. It's time. They froze. Johnny took a breath. Something was working its way up from the pit of his stomach, an echo of words not his, but learned in a sealed metal classroom from a half-broken terminal screen. Fuzzy. Faint. But now. Crystal. "I remember an old theory they taught us," he said, quieter now. "Not sure who wrote it. Maybe Hawking. Maybe some Vault-Tec crackpot." He glanced around. The artifact hummed in rhythm. Time isn't binary. It's not forward or backward or still. His hands opened. Time, all of time happens all at once, and not at all. In the token. Walter's face went pale. Andreja's jaw locked tight. Mari whispered, "What's a token?" But Barrett stepped back, like the floor had shifted. "You mean, the artifact?" Johnny didn't blink. "No," he said. "I mean all of them." The map pulsed. The veins pulsed. The spiral spun. And for the first time, the artifact answered not with a sound, but with an emotion. A single, unified truth. Something is reaching backward. And something else is crawling forward. They are not the same thing. but they are meeting here. On this world. Now. Barrett broke the silence first, slow and deliberate, arms folded across his chest but his tone stripped of its usual snark. Let's entertain this concept for a moment. Everyone turned to him. The artifact's glow painted harsh shadows across their faces, flickering like candlelight in a tomb. Barrett paced forward, eyes fixed on the spiral projection. If we go off this old theory, if time isn't linear, if everything that can happen does happen, all at once, all the time. He looked to Johnny. Is this all saying there's multiple timelines? Branches that bleed out from every choice, every mistake. His voice dipped. And the artifacts? They're not just some alien tech or gravity key. He raised a hand toward the holographic spiral. They're anchors. They're junctions. The keys to the doors between timelines. The room was still. Sarah stepped forward now, a hard edge to her voice. Barrett, are you suggesting the artifacts weren't made just for travel across stars, but across reality? Barrett finished, nodding. Across versions of us. Of this galaxy. Of everything. Johnny didn't speak, but he didn't need to. His eyes were wet, focused not on the projection, but on the artifact in his hand. It was glowing softly now, like it was listening. Walter scratched his beard. If that's true, if these things don't just let you move through space, but through outcomes, then the timelines where Earth burned, where the vaults failed, they all happened, Andrija said darkly. And may still be happening. Elsewhere. Or again. A moment passed like the breath before a scream. Johnny finally spoke, voice ragged. If that's true, then maybe somewhere, someone stopped the bombs. Maybe Vault 42 never opened. Maybe 717 never closed. He looked at the spiral again. At the branching paths. Maybe I'm the only version of me who lived. Barrett nodded, more solemn than anyone had ever seen him. Or maybe, kid, you're the one version that wasn't supposed to. Barrett paused. His voice lowered, gentled not out of pity, but reverence. You didn't survive despite what happened, Johnny. You survived because the artifact made you into something else. The others stood frozen. Sarah's eyes narrowed, calculating. Mateo stared as if seeing Johnny anew. Walter opened his mouth to speak, but couldn't. You're not just from Earth, Barrett went on, stepping closer. You are Earth's last evolution. The vaults were supposed to save the species. But all they did was bury it. You were the only one who made it through. Because the artifact chose you. A pulse rolled from the artifact in Johnny's hand, soft and slow, like a heartbeat. Barrett, Sarah said, warning in her tone. But he wasn't finished. We've thought the artifacts were tools. Maybe they are. But what if they're more than that? What if they're judges, or gardeners, or architects. They've been shaping us, not just moving us across stars or timelines, but rewriting what we are. Barrett's eyes locked with Johnny's. You're living proof. Proof that the rules of life, of time, of biology don't mean a damn thing anymore. Johnny trembled, not with fear but weight. A gravity larger than space itself pressing into his chest. I didn't ask for any of this, he whispered. No, Barrett said. But Earth did. And for a moment, none of them spoke. Because in the silence, the artifact pulsed again. Once. Twice. Then all of them felt it. A second one. Awakening. Somewhere. Not on Novoskaya. Not in New Atlantis. But deep. Far. And old. Johnny staggered back a step. His breath caught in his throat not because he lacked air, but because what he'd felt had no name. 1 second ago, he had been there with them, on Novoskaya, in orbit, constellation around him. The next, he stood in the ruins of Lancaster City, Pennsylvania, but not ruins. It was alive. Blue sky. Trees. Air that kissed his skin. The songs of birds. A dog barking in the distance. And beneath his fingers, concrete. Cool. Real. Whole. He wept without meaning to. Everything from the vault, the whispers of dead parents, the brittle screens, the classes about a world gone, and here it was. Not as a shadow, but whole. Impossible. Then came the voice. Not from a mouth. Not from above. But from the ground itself. From the gravel. From the grass. From earth. It spoke inside him like a memory not his own. Save us, Johnny. And he was back. His body never moved. His feet never left the spot. But the spiral in his hands was still glowing. And Johnny Vanjik was changed. He was breathing faster. Jaw clenched. His knuckles white around the artifact. His eyes not afraid. Not broken. But focused with something hotter than hope. With purpose. Mateo said softly, Johnny. Walter turned, suddenly uneasy. Sarah reached for her weapon instinctively, not from threat, but because she felt what was rising in him. Barrett didn't move. He just whispered it before Johnny did, like prophecy finding voice. You saw it? Johnny didn't answer. He didn't have to. He looked at the spiral and said, Lo. I need those artifacts. His fingers wrapped tighter. I need to save my home. And for the first time since Earth died, something like destiny stirred. Not for humanity. For her. For Gaia. And she had chosen her revenant. But then the artifact pulsed, then the ship shook. Not from Johnny. From something else. Mateo's eyes went wide. Scanners are spiking, no, screaming its artifact energy but twisted, corrupted. Below us. Stroud's voice hit like a hammer. Explosion near the south ridge, coordinates pinged. Buildings just went up. Sarah was already vaulting toward the controls. Get us closer, drop altitude, 10,000 meters. Johnny stumbled forward to the window. Down on Novoskaya, something alien moved. No. Not moved. Haunted. It was unlike anything in the settled systems. Angular. Black metal hull with veins of violet light crawling across it like exposed nerves. The ship didn't glide, it stabbed through the air, emitting pulses from its undercarriage, tearing through outposts built just decades ago. Glass. Fire. Screams on open comms. A woman was crying for help. A child screamed for their mother. Then static. Gone. Barrett jumped to weapons. That's not one of ours. Not UC, not Freestar, not Crimson. I don't know what the hell that is, but it's not friendly. Samco cracked his knuckles and powered up the turret. Then let's send it to hell. The ship's nose dipped, cannons unfolding from its sides like insect limbs. The alien craft began strafing another complex near a mining installation. Locking target, Sam muttered. Barrett fired first. A bolt of plasma scythed across the sky, clipping the enemy's rear stabilizer. The alien ship jerked mid-strike, then twisted and unleashed a silent, blinding retaliatory blast upward. Evasive now, Sarah shouted. Andrija was already on it, wrenching the ship to port as the beam sliced past them, sending shields flaring. Stroud called from the console, sweat on his brow. This isn't isolated. Scans are triangulating 3 more energy sources on the opposite side of the planet. This one's not alone. Mateo whispered, they're waking up. And Johnny, still holding the artifact, stood silent among them, watching fire rain down on a world that had been his peace. His voice low, cracked with rage. They're already here. And deep in the coils of the spiral artifact. Something turned its gaze back. The moment the second ship dropped into low orbit, Sam swore. The third and fourth followed seconds later, tearing into view from black voids, shimmering with impossible curvature, bent around themselves as if reality hated them being here. Contact left hard. Andrija cried out. Barrett's hands flew across the console, firing full spread, but the blasts scattered wide 2 of the newcomers, cloaked mid-maneuver, vanishing into streaks of violet shadow before reappearing behind them. These ships, Mateo breathed, they're beyond us. This isn't alien tech, this is something else. Something older. Sarah twisted the helm. I'm taking us up. We're gonna break orbit, regroup at the relay end. The console shrieked. Stroud paled. Grav drive failure. His voice cracked. They took it out. A bolt of shimmering dark light had sheared through the aft hull. The drive core gone. What replaced it was a slow, deep hum, not mechanical. It felt like something watching. Shields are folding. Barrett barked, sweat running down his temples. We can't take another hit, not from all four. Another barrage. A beam grazed the nose of the ship, sending sparks across Johnny's face as he dove for cover. Metal groaned, something buckled in the midsection. Sirens screamed. We're gonna lose this bird. Sam called. Sarah's voice was ice. Not yet. We fly until we can't. Johnny pushed himself to his feet, breathing heavy. The artifact in his hand was burning hot now. Not pain. Not heat. Power. And in his mind, he saw the spiral again. Not lines, pathways. Not weapons keys. The war hadn't just come for Novoskaya. It had come for him. He walked toward the bridge. And this time, he didn't look afraid. All power to shields. Sarah shouted, yanking the ship hard starboard as a plasma lance cracked past the hull, searing open space where they'd been moments before. Vasco's voice cut through the alarms. Diverting all non-essential systems. Shields at 74%. Holding for now. Andrija was pale but focused, eyes locked on trajectory maps. They're hurting us. Not just attacking, driving us somewhere. Samco pulled tight to the weapons rig. Like wolves circling cattle. They're smart. Real smart. Barrett slammed his fist on the console. We can't take much more of this. The drive's dead, weapons are overclocked, and these things aren't missing on accident. The four alien ships weaved in a spiral formation around them now, a perfect hunting pattern. From above, it must have looked like a ritual, not a firefight. Geometry with intent. Stroud's voice trembled. Shields down to 61%. If they fire again, then we move better. Sarah's voice was steel. Vasco, prepare to run this bird like she's stolen. Keep those shields up. Andrija, don't let them pin us. Johnny stepped forward. The artifact in his hand had gone silent. But he hadn't. We're still alive. He said it quietly, but it held weight. They're not firing to kill. They want something. Matteo looked back at him. You think this is a message? No, a test. And then the alien ships fired again. All four at once. The shields shimmered, shrieked, cracked, but held at 9%. One more hit and they'd be vapor. And yet the alien ships didn't finish it. They stopped. Drifted. Circled. And in the center of their spiral formation they opened something. A door. A gate. A challenge. Johnny gripped the artifact tighter. And it pulsed. Once. Like a heartbeat before a trial. Guys, Johnny's voice cut sharp through the rising dread. They're boxing us in. They're going to dock. A tremor went through the Frontier's hull, metal grinding against vacuum, tendrils of energy licking the ship's flanks like cold flame. The enemy vessels were closing into a precise ring, nose in, no longer shooting. They didn't need to. They were going to board. Mateo's hands clutched the rail. We hold them off as long as we can. Sarah raised her rifle. Then we make them regret it? Barrett looked at Johnny. You still got fight left in you, kid. But Johnny wasn't looking at them anymore. He was staring out the viewport, wide-eyed. And then he pointed. Wait. Look. There. The black above them ripped open like paper. 5 ships. Large. Armed. Burning in like avenging angels. Each bore the unmistakable insignia. United Colonies Vanguard. The comms crackled. A voice, crisp and controlled. Commander Twala. Constellation, hold formation. We're with you. The Vanguard ships opened fire. Missiles streaked past the Frontier, hammering into the lead alien craft. The once quiet spiraling predators jerked with sudden evasion patterns, not invulnerable after all. Andrija spun the ship wide. We've got breathing room. Shields stabilizing. Vasco called. Power grid holding. Sarah grabbed the helm, swinging them back toward planetary orbit. They gave us an opening. We take it? Barrett whooped as the Vanguard warships danced overhead, drawing the enemy off in coordinated precision strikes. Johnny gripped the edge of the console, watching the gate still open glimmer like a wound in space. The Vanguard had bought them time. But the question remained, hanging in the stale air like a shadow. Time for what? Crash one of those bastards. Stroud bellowed, eyes flashing wild from his station. We need answers. I want one of them alive. The bridge snapped to new focus. Tactical, brutal, precise. Sarah nodded without hesitation. Andrija, target the smallest ship, the one that broke formation near the gravity well. Already marked, Andrija responded, her hands flying across the controls. Diverting auxiliary thrust. I'll take out its engines, leave the rest. Barrett's fingers moved lightning quick over the firing matrix. Let's clip its wings, not vaporize it. Sam's voice growled low. We're doing this cowboy style. One shot to drop it, none to kill it. On screen, the alien ship veered, trying to break off, but it was too late. A focused barrage from the Frontier struck its rear quarter. The energy plating shattered like ice under pressure. One engine detonated, sending it spiraling toward the upper atmosphere of Novoskaya. She's going down. Mateo murmured, watching the arc of descent. Stroud clenched a fist. Good. Track that impact. We send a ground team. We find survivors. And we find out what the hell just attacked us. Johnny stared at the screen. The downed ship blazed across the sky like a fallen god. "Something tells me," he whispered, "we're not the first to meet them." Sarah turned back to the crew. "We prep for boots on the ground. This isn't over. It's just getting started." The Frontier came down in a controlled burn, angling low toward the smoking crater where the alien ship had slammed into the jungle canopy of Novskaya. Trees the size of buildings had been splintered like matchsticks, scorched earth yawning in all directions, and at the center a broken twisted metal shell, still humming with low-frequency energy. Matteo and Stroud remained aboard, overseeing orbital surveillance and long-range communications from the Frontier. Their voices piped through the crew's earpieces as the team disembarked. "You've got about 2 hours before that atmospheric storm cuts off telemetry," Stroud warned. "Get in, grab what you can, and get out. No hero moves. And watch for residual power surges," Matteo added. "That thing's hull is still reading energy signatures. Could be unstable. Could be alive." Sarah led the way, rifle drawn. Behind her moved Barrett, Andrija, Samko, and Johnny, now clad in reinforced Freestar armor retooled for Constellation's needs. His breath was tight in his chest. Not from fear. From knowing. Something in that ship was going to change everything. They reached the wreckage. The vessel was organic and angular, like something grown rather than built. The metal was black but shimmered faintly with violet veins, pulsing at irregular intervals. Barrett crouched by a slashed-open hull panel. "Looks like it broke in two on impact. Forward section might have survived intact." Andrija scanned the entry point. No movement inside. But something's blocking sensors. It's deliberate, like it's jamming us. Sam adjusted his rifle. "Then we go blind. We've done worse." Johnny stood at the breach, looking in. And they stepped into the wreckage. Into the unknown. A low metallic shriek echoed from the far side of the wreck. Sarah spun too late. It dropped from above. Not like a creature, not like a soldier, more like a shard of reality peeled loose and fell with purpose. It hit the ground in a crouch, humanoid but wrong. Shimmering layers of armor flowed and hardened across its body like it was being cast in real time. Its helmet bore no face, only a flat mask of unmoving light. Barrett opened fire first. The creature blurred sideways, his shots punching only air. "Contact. Topside move." Sarah shouted, taking position behind the twisted hull plating. The jungle burned behind them. The crashed ship pulsed low like it felt what was happening. 3 more figures emerged, gliding down the crater rim like they'd been waiting. Where one was a ghost, these were nightmares taller, clad in segmented armor that rippled between opaque and translucent. No symbols. No insignia. Just form, function, and intent. Sam fired at the lead one and scored a hit, but it kept coming, shielding its face with one forearm while the other swept wide and sent Andrija flying back into the bulkhead with a crack. Johnny went to her side, pulling her up. "You good? Nothing that won't scar?" She bared her teeth. They were losing ground. Sarah and Barrett kept tight suppressing lines, but the enemy moved like they knew the terrain already. Every advance was mirrored, every flank checked. These weren't just intruders. They were returning. Sam ducked behind a half-shattered wing strut. "They're not trying to kill us," Barrett huffed. "Could have fooled me." "No," Sam said, locking eyes with Johnny. "They want something. Or someone." And that was when one of them, the first one, the silent one, looked directly at Johnny. Didn't move. Didn't speak. Just watched. And Johnny, frozen under its gaze, remembered it. Not its face, not its name. Just a weight, like deja vu wrapped in dread. And it stepped forward. Sarah grabbed Johnny by the collar and hauled him back. "Fall to the rear. Now." Barrett snapped a grenade from his belt and chucked it underhand into the crater floor. The concussive blast lit the jungle in firelight and bought them seconds. "Mateo. Stroud." Sarah barked through her comms. "Get us an extraction vector. We're about to get buried." Mateo's voice. "Shuttle incoming, 60 seconds. Just hold. 1 minute. 4 hostiles. Too many unknowns. And one silent thing walking straight toward them like it already knew how it ended." The extraction shuttle crested the treeline, engines flaring, spotlight cutting across the crater like the promise of salvation. Then came the bolt. A single line of searing violet light lanced up from the wreck and punched through the shuttle's hull. No explosion, just a sudden seizure of systems, a flicker of lights, and the silent spiral of a dying bird. The shuttle slammed into the canopy and was gone, swallowed whole by fire and foliage. "No!" Sarah shouted, spinning on the silent figure just as 3 more dropped behind them like spears from the sky. Barrett and Sam closed ranks. Andrija's breathing was ragged. Blood trickled down the side of her face. Then came the moment everything broke. Johnny, chest heaving, stepped forward, caught between instinct and terror. The silent one moved. Too fast. Too clean. And a spear of crystalline energy launched from its hand, as fluid as breath. It struck Johnny's center mass. The world held its breath. The sound it made wasn't like pain. Not a scream. Not even a gasp. Just a stagger. A fall. His body dropped like a string had been cut. "Johnny!" Barrett roared, charging, but Sarah grabbed him, shoving him back. "He's gone," she choked. "We have to go now." The enemy pressed in from every side. More shapes blurred from the shadows, encircling. One lunged, nearly cleaving Andrija in two. Sam dragged her clear. There was no cover left. No plan. Just retreat. Barrett looked down one last time. Johnny lay still. Eyes open. Chest unmoving. And above him stood the Silent One, hand lowering, head tilted slightly. Watching. Constellation broke. Sarah led the charge uphill toward a narrow ravine. "We're not done," she whispered. Barrett didn't respond. He couldn't. He had left too much behind. The jungle swallowed their retreat in a haze of smoke and blood. Constellation ran dragged each other through mud, through broken undergrowth, through the wreckage of their mission, of their hope. Whatever those things were, they weren't just here to scout. They were here to conquer. Barrett stumbled over a tree root and nearly went down. Sam caught him, hurling him forward without a word. Andrija covered the rear, rifle almost too hot to hold. Sarah's voice rasped through grit and panic, guiding them like a blade cutting through fog. Just a little farther north, slope extraction windows closing. And then the sky broke open. 4 UC Vanguard dropships roared overhead, cutting low and fast. The trees screamed beneath their engines, winds whipping hard enough to tear bark clean off trunks. One flared and slammed down hard, its belly hatch already open and pouring out Vanguard Marines in gleaming armor, rifles raised, forming a wall around the fleeing crew. Constellation. "Move," one barked. "We've got you covered." Sarah turned to look back once toward the direction of the crater. Toward Johnny. But there was no time. No chance. They were herded into the belly of the ship, boots clanging against metal. The ramp sealed behind them. Explosions echoed through the canopy. The planet was already burning. In orbit, Vanguard Command made the call. Novoskaya was compromised. All forces were to evacuate immediately. 30 minutes. That's all it took. 30 minutes to lose a world. The skies above boiled with unfamiliar energy. Ships black as absence spread across the atmosphere like a disease. Communications jammed. Sensors scrambled. And beneath it all, in the ash and dirt of a world barely lived in, Johnny Vanjik's body lay cold. Alone. Unburied. Unmourned. Except by the world itself. The jungle is silent, broken trees, charred roots, blackened soil. Smoke hangs like ghosts over the crater. The crash site is scorched clean. Blood darkens the ground where a boy should have died. But the silence shivers. And then, a breath that should not exist. A soundless pulse like the beat of a star. Johnny's fingers twitch. His chest does not rise. There is no heart left to do the work, but still, he moves. One eye clouded, blood-streaked opens. The other follows, slow and crackling like something ancient pulled from the ice. The sky above him, full of fire and war and retreat, begins to shift. He sees it all. Earth. So far away it should be meaningless. But to him, it isn't. It's as if he's hovering in its orbit. As if some buried thread between soul and soil, some ancient contract is pulling him back. And then he hears them. Not one, not hundreds, not thousands, but all of them. Every scream never answered. Every plea lost in sealed vaults. Every whisper beneath bombs and collapsed sky. From kings to slaves, from warriors to farmers, from the pharaoh's first scribe to the last vault child's whisper. Save us. Save us. Save us. Languages long dead. Names long forgotten. But the cry is the same. His body convulses. Muscles torn and failing ignite. Bone grinds. Eyes once soft with grief erupt with fire. Light cracks through his wounds like golden fractures in marble. Not the artifact. Not its power. Something older. Something angrier. Something that watched too long and held back too much. A shadow above one of the attackers, weapon in hand, descending from the trees. Ready to confirm the kill. Then it sees him. Johnny Vanjik is standing. Chest torn open. Eyes like suns. Skin alive with memory. The creature hesitates. It knows power. It is power. But this is vengeance. This is ancestral fury. This is the planet itself, wearing the skin of its last son. Johnny steps forward. No breath. No heartbeat. Just purpose. The Starborn takes a step back. Too late. You monsters, you killed them. Why? Johnny lunges. His hand clamps around the Starborn's plated neck like a vice. The alien doesn't even have time to resist before its body is ripped off the ground and hurled across the clearing, slamming into trees with a crash that echoes for miles. Bark explodes, trunks shatter, debris rains like splinters from heaven. The Starborn rises, one leg twisted, dragging metal against stone as it stumbles upright. It retaliates, raising one glowing arm. An arc of silver light flares and whips toward Johnny. But it's too slow. He steps through it, the light searing against his shoulder but not stopping him. He's not fast anymore. He's inevitable. The Starborn halts. Then, calmly, it speaks. Its voice is wrong, layered, timeless. Certain events are to be followed in all timelines. For humanity to evolve, to reach unity. Things that hold it back, such as Earth and its past, must not be allowed to exist. Johnny stops. He doesn't breathe. Doesn't blink. The words don't hit his ears. They hit something deeper. Not just the meaning, but the motive. Earth was a sacrifice. Not for war. Not for power. But for design. And then, all at once, the vaults. The magnetosphere collapse. The long silence. The screaming spirits of a dead world. The artifact that accidentally ended the war. It wasn't fate. It was scripted. His eyes burn. Not with light, but with knowing. You sick bastards. His voice shakes. You knew. He steps forward. Each movement heavier. You fuckers knew that we were going to accidentally kill our own planet. The Starborn doesn't respond. It doesn't have to. Because Johnny Vanjik has already seen the truth. Unity was never for everyone. And someone, somewhere, chose who didn't get to come. Johnny marches forward, fists clenched, every step shaking the scorched soil beneath him. The Starborn, if it can even be called that, scrambles to recover, its arms snapping up in desperation. A blade shimmers into view, osmium, etched with impossible fractal designs, vibrating with quantum energy. It lunges, driving the blade straight toward Johnny's heart. It snaps on contact. The shard shatters like glass against his chest, falling in silver slivers to the ground. Johnny doesn't flinch. His hand is already around the creature's throat, hoisting it up like dead weight, rage boiling out of him like solar fire. You freaks of nature. You let billions of people die. The Starborn thrashes, kicking, twisting, arms clawing at his grip. But it's futile. It's not a fight. It's an execution. You think you get to just wander from timeline to timeline, ignoring humanity's cries for help. His eyes lock with the thing inside the mask, whatever glimpses of thought or fear exist beneath that alien gaze. You're no better than the idiots who started the Great War in the first place, no better than Vault Tech, who left us to rot. He grips tighter, bones crush, metal gives. You're not gods. You're cowards with maps. The Starborn's helmet fractures at the temple, hairline cracks racing outward. A distorted whine escapes its vocalizer as pressure builds, containment falters. And then, snap. A gurgle. The universe doesn't rip. There is no pulse of fading energy. No majestic unraveling into stars. Just a dying gasp. Blood pooling inside the helmet. A body slumping in Johnny's hand. Not a being of time and space. Just a corpse. Just a murderer who finally met someone who couldn't die. Johnny lets it fall. It hits the ground like garbage. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. Earth had its reaper now. The forest is silent, unnaturally so. The wind has stilled. Even the air feels like it's holding its breath. High above, framed against the bruised sky and burning treetops, they watch. 3 more Starborn. Silent. Hovering. Alien shapes cloaked in shifting geometry and veils of light not meant for the human eye. They witnessed it all. The snap. The fall. The corpse. One of their own, reduced to nothing but bleeding meat in the dirt, strangled not by technology, not by war machines, not by gods. By a boy who shouldn't be alive. By Johnny Vanjik, who had lost everything, and in that loss, found something else, something that made the impossible terrifyingly real. None of the Starborn descend. They don't intervene. They don't speak. Because for the first time in their fractured, infinite pathways through existence, they are afraid. They look at Johnny not as an anomaly, not as a broken piece of time, but as something new, a variable, a threat. And they vanish, not in grandeur, but in retreat. Johnny stands over the crumpled body, bloodied fists at his sides, breath ragged with fury and grief. His voice raw, cracked, filled with contempt cuts through the clearing like a blade. Cowards. He stares up at the empty sky where the others had watched, where they had run. You'll watch trillions die over hundreds of timelines. You'll let history burn just to keep your precious loot clean. He kicks the limp corpse at his feet, face twisted with disgust. But you can't handle it when someone fights back. When one of you dies. He spits into the dirt. Classic. The trees around him groan in the silence, and for a moment it feels like the very forest is recoiling not from him, but from what he's becoming. Then he looks to the horizon, back toward the cratered earth where cities used to stand, and beyond that, to the stars. He knows now. This isn't just about saving Earth anymore. It's about punishing the ones who watched it die. Johnny turns, eyes wide with the weight of realization. You're not hiding from me, Starborn. You lot have the rest of the artifacts, I know it. The ones me and Constellation haven't found yet. He takes a shaky breath, the wind around him carrying the scent of scorched soil and burned alloy. Artifacts. Constellation. And then it hits him like a grab train to the chest. God damn it. That's where they're headed next. His fists clench. Panic. Fury. Dread. He spins around, but there's no one left to answer. No Barrett. No Sarah. No Andrija. No Sam. No Vanguard evac team. Nothing but fire and ash and the broken curve of alien wreckage behind him. He's alone again. And worse, he doesn't even know how to fly. For the first time since rising from death, he falters. I don't know how to. The wind rises suddenly. Engines. Not alien. Familiar. Low band rumble. He looks up. And from behind the smoke-lined treetops, the sleek silhouette of the Frontier decloaks, battle-scarred but alive, drifting toward him like a ghost returning from war. A speaker crackles to life with static. Johnny Vanjik, Vasco's voice cuts through like warm steel. We are here. Please do not panic. You appear to be in distress. Mateo's voice jumps in next, shaky but warm. Dios mío, Johnny. We saw everything. We tried to get out during the chaos, but the grav drive took a hit. We've been cloaked for hours. Stroud's voice follows, heavy with relief. "We weren't gonna leave you, kid. Not you. Not after everything." The ramp lowers, steam hissing from the ship's belly as the Frontier settles into the clearing, lights flickering on like eyes. Johnny doesn't hesitate. He bolts toward the open hatch, lungs burning, heart pounding in a chest that by all logic shouldn't beat at all. He sprints into the light, and as the ramp seals shut behind him, he whispers, more to himself than anyone, "I'm not letting them take anyone else." The ship hums with renewed power. Constellation is in danger. The artifacts are in play. The war isn't over. And this time, Johnny Vanjik is bringing it to them. Johnny staggers into the cockpit, eyes hollow but burning with a sharp, defiant heat. The doors hiss closed behind him. The hum of the Frontier's systems is the only thing that feels real right now. Mateo and Stroud look like they've seen a ghost. Vasco scans him, but says nothing. No diagnostic could explain what just stood back up. Johnny slumps into a seat and wipes the blood and soot from his face with the back of his hand. "Boy, am I glad to see you three." He pauses, staring at the floor, knuckles trembling. "Those Starborn, they killed everyone." Stroud starts to speak, but Johnny shakes his head. "No, everyone. The Vanguard Squad, the colonies on the surface. Constellation." He stops. The others made it out. They jumped to New Atlantis before the grav drives were shot. I watched the markers go. But the rest? Gone. The bastards didn't just kill them, they said. He looks up, expression like broken stone. They said no connection to Earth can be allowed to survive. No memory, no legacy, no roots. Like it's a disease that needs cutting out. Mateo curses under his breath. Stroud paces, jaw locked. They called it evolution, Johnny continues. But it's not evolution. It's erasure. These multiversal freaks think that wiping our past makes us worthy of whatever the hell they've become. He leans forward, voice low, shaking with rage. They think Earth holds us back. So they let it die. Let us die. Every vault, every city, every last whisper of who we were. Just dust to them. The cockpit is silent for a beat. Then Vasco's voice chimes in. Their interpretation of progress is highly selective. Johnny stands, eyes on the stars. We're not done yet. We know where they'll go next, New Atlantis. They'll want the artifact. They'll want Constellation. They'll want to burn whatever hope we still have. He turns back to them. They want to erase Earth. Then we make sure they never forget it. Stroud slams into the pilot's seat, fingers already racing over the console. Mateo locks in the coordinates. Vasco monitors rear sensor arrays for any lingering starborn presence. The Frontier's engines roar to life, scattering ash and debris in a shockwave of defiance. Johnny buckles into the co-pilot seat, face pale but carved with purpose. Take us to orbit. We jump the moment the drive calibrates. The clouds break apart around them, the dying light of Novskaya sun reflecting off the ship's scorched hull. The planet falls away, a burning wound in the black. Somewhere below, countless graves now mark the beginning of something new. Grav drive primed, Mateo calls out. Destination, New Atlantis. Execute, Johnny orders, voice cold steel. The ship shudders. Reality splits. The frontier rips into the grav jump. Space bends like glass, folding inward, then snapping back. And they are gone. Bound for New Atlantis. Bound for what's left of home. Bound for vengeance. Johnny grips the side of the chair as the grav jump ends, his knuckles white. The stars stabilize. New Atlantis rises in the distance, shining like a crown, but the light does little to warm the thoughts in his head. They won't hit the colony directly, he mutters, eyes narrowing. Too many eyes. Too much firepower. You see, Freestar, House VA ruin, they'd risk triggering a war they can't hide from. Vasco, running diagnostics beside him, chimes in, voice steady, calm, unshakably loyal. From the surface and skies? No. The lodge is constructed from reinforced deep core compounds. It can withstand several high explosive salvos, even from orbital bombardment. Johnny's eyes flicker toward the monitor, watching the image of New Atlantis draw closer. But there's a pause. Vasco's head tilts slightly. However, I fear our usual escape route through the well beneath the lodge may present a vulnerability. These starborn exhibit signs of transmutation, the ability to shift molecular presence from one space to another. You're saying they could just skip the front door? Correct. Standard shielding in the lodge is optimized for physical and radiological threats. Areas like the well, less fortified and exposed to older infrastructure, may allow access through quantum tunneling or phased incursion. Stroud speaks up, voice tense. If they're coming, they'll come through there. Quiet. Fast. Precise. Johnny clenches his jaw. Stroud exhales through his teeth, leaning forward, elbows on knees. Yeah, that's what worries me. They've been playing this game longer than any of us have been alive. Who knows how many timelines they've run this exact play. Mateo's fingers dance across the console, calculating ETA. 13 minutes to New Atlantis. That's all we've got. Johnny doesn't move, but his stare hardens as the city creeps into view on the horizon. That glow should have meant safety. Now it just looks like a bullseye. We're not gonna beat them there, he says quietly. They've already been. Or will be. It doesn't matter. To them, time's just a loop they've learned how to walk. Vasco tilts his head with an audible click. If that is true, then arriving on time may be a flawed expectation. We must instead arrive, with the correct intent. Johnny looks at him, and for once, almost smiles. Then let's make that intent count. As the Frontier descends toward the city, its engines scream louder as if echoing the urgency in Johnny's chest. The lodge is waiting. Constellation is likely already under siege. And the war for the soul of humanity is no longer across stars. It's here. It's now. The descent feels endless. The city sprawls beneath them, majestic, pristine, unaware. As the Frontier knifes through the upper atmosphere, the radio crackles half static, half chaos. UC channels are alive with fragmented reports, anomalous particle signatures near the well, magnetic surges, flickers of quantum displacement. Mateo's voice is grim. Vasco was right. They're already there. Johnny's breath slows. His voice, however, doesn't waver. Bring us in fast. We don't have time for a clean landing. Copy, Mateo responds. Cutting speed buffers. Bracing for impact. The ship slams down just outside the lodge. Alarms wail across the district as civilians scatter, some staring skyward, already glimpsing shapes warping above the skyline. Shimmers. Rips in the air. Time bleeding. They don't wait. The ramp drops. Johnny's boots hit the ground first. Stroud behind him. Vasco rolls forward, his chassis low to the ground, scanning for fluctuations. They sprint for the lodge entrance, still sealed, for now. Where's the rest of Constellation? Johnny huffs. Inside, I hope, Stroud says. If the Starborn didn't beat us to the punch. They breach the main door's emergency override accepted thanks to Vasco's codes. The lodge is dark. Dead quiet. And then, a flicker. A pulse. Light bends at the far end of the hallway like a reflection on oil, pulling inward. Transmat signature, Vasco says. They're inside. Weapons come out. No more hesitation. They move in fast, sweeping corridors. Portraits on the walls tilt at strange angles, as if the building itself were breathing. The closer they get to the well access point, the worse it gets, cracks of unreality running along the ceiling like veins. Suddenly gunfire. Andreja's voice echoes from below. They're in the archives. Multiple contacts. Johnny doesn't think. He moves. Down the stairs. Through the breach. And he sees it. Starborn. 5 of them. Not armor. Not suits. Shells. Echoes of versions of themselves from places that never were, each face more distorted than the last. One of them turns. They recognize him. He feels it in the air, the way their bodies twist, retreating, uncertain. And then, it's him, one hisses, voice like glass. The one who killed the keeper. Everything goes white. The fight begins. Johnny's voice pierces the howling distortion of the lodge basement, louder than the temporal ripples warping the walls around them. His boots scrape across the floor, dust rising from decades-old cracks as he stands tall in the shifting, oil-slick light of the transmat field. The starborn, spectral and unnatural, recoil as if struck by something unseen, a gravity forming around the boy who should not have survived. And then Johnny speaks, low at first, trembling with rage. "This isn't a fight you can win, Starborn." He steps forward. "You're used to ghosts, observing from your little veils of unreality, pulling strings, nudging dominoes. But I'm not a domino. I'm the damn table." One of the Starborn lunges. Johnny doesn't flinch. "I will kill all of you." His voice climbs now, fury sharpening into something deeper, conviction. "I'll take your precious artifacts. I'll burn through every timeline, every gate, every trick you've built to keep humanity crawling toward your unity." He clenches his fists. The air vibrates around him. "And I will save Earth. Every soul you let die. Every vault you abandoned. Every name left to rot in the dirt." The Starborn ripple in panic. One tries to speak, but Johnny cuts them off. "All those sins of the past? All that so-called evolution? Your sterile future means nothing to the people you left behind." He's glowing now, no artifact in sight, but the same pulse, the same energy, bleeding off his skin in waves. The Starborn falter. And Johnny roars. "You forgot something. You thought Earth was just a grave. But Earth remembers. And I am its voice." The first Starborn surged forward, a blur of shimmering folds, light bending unnaturally around its sleek, faceless suit. But Johnny met the charge with stillness, almost bored, as his hand snapped out and caught the attacker mid-lunge. In one fluid motion, he drove the figure backward, slamming them against a support pillar so hard it cracked with a groan. His other hand reached up and tore off the helmet. It hissed as pressure equalized, and the mask clattered to the ground. Beneath it, a face. Human. Pale. Tired. Eyes wide with something more ancient than fear, guilt. Johnny's voice dropped to a whisper, but it carried. "And the worst part is, after all your indifference, your inaction." His hand tightened around the man's throat. "You're still just as human as the rest of us." There was no time to flinch. A second Starborn tried to intervene, this one armed, its weapon a twisted cylinder radiating energy like a star mid-birth. With an inhuman yell, it fired. The bolt of light struck Johnny square in the chest. He didn't move. The crackle of energy fizzled uselessly on his skin, repelled like a soft breeze against iron. Johnny turned slowly, eyes locked on the weapon now trembling in the enemy's grip. He walked forward. Each step shattered the air. Then he grabbed the gun. The moment he touched it, the glow around the weapon collapsed. Gone. The illusion stripped bare. What remained in his hands was a standard, decades-old .44 Magnum, scratched and well-used. Johnny chuckled. Still relying on our technology. He looked at the weapon, then at the broken helmet starborn struggling to rise. And for a heartbeat, he wasn't there. He was back. Lancaster. The pavement warm beneath his fingers. The hum of streetlights. A world alive. He blinked the memory away. Raised the gun. And for the record. Bang. The bullet slammed into the first starborn's chest. The body convulsed, then crumbled not into flickering multiversal static or radiant dust, but into bone, blood, and ash. Nothing godlike about it. Just dead. Just human. You were using the weapon wrong. The remaining starborn faltered. Their shimmering forms, once calm and assured, now twitched with uncertainty. They exchanged glances, silent, tense, barely containing something close to fear. Johnny stood in the center of the fractured room, boot prints scorched into steel. Around him, reality itself began to stutter. The walls flickered. The vault's decay peeled back, replaced by fresh steel, then by trees, then by skyscrapers, then by glass and ash. Each blink of time pulled through another version of the same world, Earth. Before. After. During. Forgotten. Remembered. His home folded and unfolded over itself like a story retold in 1,000 tongues. And Johnny saw all of them. He didn't collapse under the weight. He stood taller. You don't understand me because you're not meant to. I'm outside your comprehension now. He looked up at the nearest starborn, its helmet unreadable, its stance suddenly, visibly unsure. You ask what I am. The air split with a low hum like harmonics torn loose from time itself. Here's the truth. The lodge, no, the many lodges flickered in ghost light behind him. 100 timelines merged at the edges. In some, the lodge was rubble. In others, a temple. In one, a garden with walls of starlight. Johnny's eyes glowed not with power, but clarity. Your unity does exist. But like you, it's nothing but a biased observer. It believes in singularity, in collapse, in the erasure of difference for the sake of order. He stepped forward. The starborn stepped back. But that's not what evolution looks like. That's what extinction looks like. And then he said it. My kind has come to intolerate that. The phrase rang out, sharper than any weapon. The starborn froze, visibly shaken. Not just by the challenge, but by the implication. Yes, Johnny said, lips curling. My kind. The survivors. The orphans. The children of broken vaults and forgotten timelines. We are what you made by your silence. A silence spread deeper than space. And here's the truth about humanity, Johnny growled. About Earth. About us. The room, if it could still be called that, flickered again. Now he stood beneath the Eiffel Tower. Now a crater. Now the Appalachian wastes. Now a schoolroom. All earth. All real. All alive in him. It's not holding us back. He stared down the faceless masks. It's what carries us forward. Farther than your unity ever could. He raised the magnum again, not to fire, but to show the grip worn by decades of hands. Humanity is already more advanced. He lowered the gun, fire dancing behind his eyes. Because unlike you, we remember what it means to feel. The very air cracked when he said it. Not from sound. From meaning. From the sheer weight of will stitched into every syllable. Johnny stood in the pulsing core of the fractured lodge, lit by the trembling light of overlapping timelines. Around him, the Starborn stared, not with superiority, not with purpose, but with something they had long since lost the right to feel: dread. He stepped forward, dust curling up around his boots like gravity itself bent to him now. A voice, once broken and grieving, now rang like steel on steel. I am Johnny Vanjik. His voice echoed not just in the room, but across timelines. Into every vault that never reopened. Into every classroom buried in ash. Into every version of Earth that had been swallowed, abandoned, rewritten, or erased. Duke of a county that no longer exists in this timeline. One Starborn faltered. The others shifted, backs straightening, uncertain. Johnny kept going. On a world inside a country long since forgotten. I'm the Vanjik of the forgotten timeline. And much like my counterparts across all timelines. His fists clenched. I will save my home. Reality pulsed behind him. And for just a moment, all things stilled because the name echoed. Vanjik. Across realities. Across outcomes. A scar, and a promise, woven into history's skin. The Vanjikis can never be beaten by the likes of you. His glare burned straight through the glowing masks of the Starborn. Tell me, nightmares, he growled, voice dropping to a cold snarl. Are you afraid of the dark yet? One Starborn backed away. Another shimmered with instability. Johnny took another step forward. Because this is the power of humanity. This is the power of chaos theory, not unity. Behind him, echoes of every moment that brought him here roared to life. Lancaster under stars, Vault 717's rusted doors, the dead child who walked alone under a void sky and woke up. This is the power of the Vanjikis. And then, quieter. One hand to his heart. Because without humanity, we wouldn't be what we are. He raised his eyes once more. And without me, you're just shadows in a dead sky. The spiral of time twisted behind him. And Johnny Vanjik stood, unmoved. The nightmare had met its reckoning. The spiral behind him flared blazing arcs of fractured time, spinning like a dying sun made of mirrors and fire. The Starborn hesitated. They had watched civilizations fall. They had culled timelines deemed unworthy. They had erased kings and martyrs, prophets, and tyrants, because they believed in the perfection of singularity unity. But this wasn't in the spiral. This wasn't in any of the paths they had seen. Johnny Vanjik didn't belong in their doctrine. He was outside the pattern. He was noise in their signal. And worst of all, he was still human. The first Starborn moved. A flicker of light, particle-shifted muscle, stepping through phase to flank him with a blade of gravitic flame. Johnny caught it, barehanded. The weapon sizzled in his grasp, vibrating with impossible energy. Johnny's arm held firm. His eyes never blinked. "Your unity," he said, "was never built for us." And now, he crushed the weapon. It screamed like a dying comet and vanished into sparks. "I'm done asking why. Now I answer for the dead." He moved like fire in a vacuum. The second Starborn didn't even raise its shield in time. Johnny was already there, snapping its neck with the sound of cracking ice. The body dissolved into blood and cloth, not transcendence, not ascension, just death. A third Starborn screamed in some ancient dialect. It raised its hands, fingers glowing with a sun's worth of energy, but Johnny hurled the broken body of its comrade into it, breaking the spell before it left the mouth. "How many?" he snarled, walking forward as the remaining two retreated, weapons raised. "How many people did you let die? Vaults, cities, worlds." They fired. Plasma, pulse, gravity shard. It didn't matter. Johnny walked through it all, steam rising from his skin, coat burned and blackened but eyes alive with the fury of Earth's lost billions. One left to flee through a shimmer portal. He grabbed it mid-transit, ripped it out of its phase state and tore out its spine with a roar that echoed across stars. The final one tried to plead, some voice modulated and strange, but Johnny didn't wait. He raised the .44 Magnum. "This is for the vaults." Bang. "For my parents." Bang. "For Earth." Bang. The Starborn fell. No flash of ascension. No noble death. Just silence. And Johnny stood alone again in the blood-slick wreckage. The power of unity. It broke against the fury of the forgotten. The Vanjik of the dead world had made his answer clear. No more gods. No more destiny. Only vengeance. His boots ground into the carbon-scored metal, slick with the aftermath of ash, smoke, and vaporized armor. Johnny turned slowly, eyes scanning the trembling horizon, the dying pulse of dimensional rifts flickering out like candles in a storm. Silence crept in, but it wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of things holding their breath. The air vibrated with residual phase energy. Johnny could feel them. Watching. Waiting. Still here. He raised the smoking .44, now heavy with meaning. His voice rang out, steady and cold. Now, if any more of you lot are hiding in the shadows. His boots echoed with each step forward, methodical, unhurried. I suggest you hand over the artifacts. His gaze narrowed, focusing beyond light and form, into folds where time twisted and reality grew thin. He didn't need a scanner. He felt them, stalking the edges of his perception like wolves in the dark. He turned, sharply aimed directly at the air. I can see you. Something shifted in the veil just enough to suggest fear. And I won't give you the chance to come out of your will a second time. The air cracked. Shimmered a silhouette, barely holding onto its phase cloak. Then another. Two more behind. Their armor buzzed with uncertainty, weapons drawn but shaking. Johnny didn't flinch. He stood tall in the smoke and ruin of their fallen kin, coat shredded, blood on his face, vengeance in his stance. You think you're above consequence? That your place outside time makes you untouchable? He raised the barrel of the magnum again, not at a single one but at all of them. I'm done playing catch up. You wanted humanity to forget Earth? Then remember this, I am Earth's memory made flesh. I'm what's left. I'm what's coming. One of the starborn flickered. The others held still. No response. Just the low groan of the ruined landscape behind him, and the growing tension of a war that had just turned personal. Johnny didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The silence between dimensions hung heavy with threat but heavier still with certainty. Ash drifted like snowflakes over the battlefield. The .44 hung at his side, smoldering faintly in the dying light of the ruptured sky. The wind whispered through the wreckage, carrying with it the weight of his command. He looked straight at them. Not the masks. Through them. Into the remnants of who they used to be. Hand them over. No one moved. His voice darkened. Leave this timeline. A flicker of hesitation rippled through the starborn like a shiver down a collective spine. Some reached into the folds of their suits. One dropped something, the curved shimmer of a fragment, unmistakably part of the artifact array. Another followed. Then two more. One held on just a second too long. Now. Johnny's hand twitched barely. The starborn dropped the fragment like it burned. And pray, he continued, stepping forward as his eyes caught the ripple of a breach forming behind them. I don't follow. The veil trembled. One by one, the starborn backed away into phase, vanishing in spirals of blue fire and folding space. Not fleeing. Retreating. The kind you only do when you're outmatched. When they were gone, when the shards clinked softly on the scorched earth and the world stilled again, Johnny bent to collect them. Each piece hummed in his palm, resonating with the others they'd stolen, and with him. He looked up at the sky. Toward Earth. Toward the stars. Run, he muttered. Time's not on your side anymore. The dust still hung in the air like judgment. Burning hulls, fractured rock, the smell of ozone and old blood. A perimeter had formed. Military-grade dropships and Vanguard fighters now circled the site, engines low and weapons hot. You see soldiers spread out in tactical arcs, boots crunching over scorched soil, weapons raised with all the discipline protocol demanded, and none of the steadiness. They'd seen the feed. They'd all seen it. Satellite surveillance didn't blink. Neither did the media uplinks. And now, half the system had just witnessed a boy, barely a teenager, slaughter what looked like gods. Or demons. Or maybe both. A boy whose face no one recognized. In a vault suit, from a planet that had been a grave for a century. Constellation stood just outside the kill zone, silent, hands off their weapons. Sarah Morgan's face was unreadable. Barrett looked like he was watching history happen and mourning it at the same time. Mateo stood with his hands clenched. Andreja's eyes never left the sky, waiting for what might follow. But Johnny didn't move. Not at first. His shoulders were square. His face was lit by the glow of the hovering fragments. 3, then 4, then 5 pieces of the armillary now circling him in slow, spiraling orbits. They cast glints of alien light across his torn Vault-Tec suit, across the cracked barrel of the Magnum still warm in his hand. One soldier, voice tight, called out, "Who are you?" A beat passed. Then Johnny turned slowly, not threatening, just, sure. The fragments shimmered as if drawn to his breath. "I'm Johnny Vanjik," he said, voice sharp enough to cut alloy. "From planet Earth." He raised his hand. The artifacts reacted like they recognized him. And this he held the orbiting shards in a loose fist, letting them rise higher. "This is how I'm going to save my home." Nobody breathed. The soldiers slowly lowered their rifles. One by one. The entire field, frozen in that moment, bore witness not just to survival, or rage, or war, but to something new. Something that didn't belong to the old timelines, to Unity, to the Starborn, or to the bureaucracies of settled space. The forgotten timeline had just found its voice. And the stars? The stars would remember his name. The words didn't echo. They reverberated through feeds, through ranks, through the soul of every ear that dared listen. Johnny's voice was not the scream of a boy. It was the pronouncement of a nation that refused extinction. Let it be known. The air itself seemed to halt. Satellites caught every syllable, streamed them across terminals and hollow screens from New Atlantis to Aquila City. Even the temples of House Vieruin paused their chants. That anyone who hurts the cradle of humanity ever again will not live to see tomorrow. The fragments pulsed, harmonizing, orbit tightening around him like a halo of divine geometry. The very sun could supernova and swallow the entire Sol system. His boots were planted in broken rock. and Earth will still stand. The UC officers barely moved. Someone at a console aboard a dropship whispered, "Is that even possible?" Another soldier wept silently, remembering stories his grandmother told him of oceans and trees. Johnny's gaze scanned every corner of the crowd, the world, the sky. Follow if you dare. Gaia welcomes all, but Earth is not, you see. It's not free star. His voice dropped like steel into silence. You so much as lay a single flag on our shores. The magnum twitched at his side. And I'll gun you down next. Then the light bent. Reality shivered. From every direction, shards of glowing artifact ore came tearing through the void. Streaks of crystalline energy converging from the lodge on New Atlantis to this singular moment, like the universe had been holding its breath, waiting to deliver him everything he needed. The armillary, complete. No starborn ever moved that fast. No system ever locked that tight. The fragments aligned around him, concentric, spinning so fast the sound was like a scream folded into song. A ripple exploded from the center, energy folding back into itself like paper being swallowed by gravity. In the blink between heartbeats, Johnny Vanjik vanished. And in the space he left behind, only two things remained. The echo of his name, and the promise that Earth would never be taken again. Lancaster County, Earth. Just outside Vault 717. The wind didn't blow. There was no atmosphere to carry it. But something shifted on a dead world beneath a dead sky. Light fractured across old soil. The outline of a boy emerged beside a rusted vault door. Alive. Changed. Returned. Johnny Vanjik had come home. He holds the armillary out with both hands, the fragments pulsing as if in recognition. The weight of them not just physical, but historical, draws a low hum from the earth itself. Fragments of myth, shards of worlds, truths etched in the geometry of fate, all spinning now in unity. Go outward. The words weren't a command. They were a release. The armillary exploded upward, not in violence, but in brilliance. Each piece broke from his grasp like doves shot into the firmament, soaring into the black silence above. They raced past the desolate hills, through the upper reaches of the exosphere, leaving behind radiant trails that painted the sky in hues humanity hadn't seen in centuries. And then the stars bent back toward Earth. All of it, the junk, the debris, the steel carcasses of dead satellites, the ghosts of humanity's first flight toward survival, ancient solar arrays, cracked hulls from evacuation craft that never finished their journey, all of it responded. Drawn. Summoned. Transformed. The armillary pieces devoured the remains of Earth's forgotten ambition. They reassembled with surgical grace, wrapping the planet in concentric rings, fluid, atom-like, orbiting halos of glimmering alloy and ancient energy. They didn't just float. They sang. Each orbit etched a new line of protection. a lattice, a shield. The artificial became biological in purpose, synthetic but soulful, a shell built not of metal alone, but of memory, loss, hope. A planetary exoskeleton, alive with motion and light. And then, with a thunderless snap, the magnetosphere returned. A ripple. No, a resurrection. Auroras bled into view across the skyless sky, flickering with impossible color. Atmospheric pressure flickered and held. The first real gust of wind in decades brushed against Johnny's face, and this time, it didn't hurt. The sky above Earth was blue for the first time in nearly 2 centuries. Behind him, Vault 717 stood as a sentinel to the past. Above him, Earth breathed again. And in front of him, the future waited. The armillary rings whirled with purpose above Earth, like a mind made visible, like a heartbeat that had forgotten how to beat and now remembered with terrifying, beautiful certainty. Johnny Vanjik stood rooted where death once lived. And now, something ancient stirred beneath his boots. The power didn't crackle like electricity. It pulsed gentle, rolling, inevitable. It moved through the air, through the soil, through time itself. Not backwards, not forwards, corrective. Reality, rethreaded. The scars of centuries unraveled. He felt it first in his lungs. Moisture. Real moisture. Air with taste, with weight. The dryness of decades lifted in a single breath. Then warmth followed, not heat from solar radiation or stripped atmosphere, but warmth from weather, from life. And then he heard. Not the sound of wind against steel. Not the silence of a dead world. Footsteps. He turned slowly, eyes wide as the Vault 717 entrance, long rusted and frozen, hissed with pressurization. The gears moved not because someone forced them, but because the system responded to something it had not felt in over 200 years. Safety. The door opened. And people, real people, stepped out. Blinking. Dressed in suits, in vault blue, in homemade patched together fabrics from centuries of waiting. Children clutched adults. Elderly cried into daylight they hadn't seen in lifetimes. They didn't know where they were, not really. But they knew something had changed. And then, more doors. More vaults. Like echoes, the same moment occurred everywhere across the planet. Vaults that had failed were rewound. Lives lost were restitched. DNA from the soil, the air, the bloodied corners of history, it all rewove itself under the planetary embrace of the armillary's rewriting wool. Johnny could see it now. Grass breaking through cracked concrete. Street lamps rising like new saplings. Trees regrowing, unfurling, refusing to remain dead. Animals blinking into existence like dreams too real to forget. Oceans swelling, coastlines knitting themselves whole. The Earth, no longer a planet, a presence again. He dropped to one knee as it overwhelmed him. Not from pain. From grace. Around Vault 717, the hills had disappeared. In their place, Lancaster City. The city his parents told him about in stories half remembered, in holotapes corrupted by time. No longer ruins. No longer myth. The skyline gleamed as if it had never been abandoned. Windows shined. Roads stretched out in symmetry. Signs bore names once forgotten. There were people everywhere. Not confused. Not resurrected like zombies from a broken world. Alive as if they had always been. And above it all, ringing earth like a guardian god, the armillary spun watchful, silent, a reminder that even death was not absolute when will was strong enough. Johnny stood again, barefoot on grass that had not existed yesterday. His name echoed in voices he didn't know. But the city, the planet, the world remembered him now. And the war for Earth? It was no longer about saving it. Now it was about keeping it safe. From the orbiting rings of the armillary, time's grip on Earth softened. Not reversed. Not overwritten. But rewound, like breath returning to lungs long since stilled, not to undo the past, but to return what never should have been taken. All over the planet, people came back. First came the vault survivors. Blinking against the daylight, stepping onto land no longer poisoned. They emerged with the ghosts of duty and discipline in their posture, survivors hardened by generations of waiting for a war that never came. But then, the other group came. They didn't come from vaults. They came from the ashes. From cities turned glass. From battlefields scorched into silence. From hallways flooded with fire in the final moments of 2077. From schools, homes, hospitals, all the places where innocence once died. And now, they were alive again. One moment, they were ash trapped in a memory the world had buried. The next they were standing. Soldiers once vaporized in orbital strikes now gasped and dropped to their knees, feeling soil instead of steel underfoot. Families torn apart by sonic bombs embraced in the middle of crosswalks that shouldn't exist anymore. A nurse clutched her medical bag in disbelief beside a hospital that shouldn't be standing. A child reached for a kite in a sky that hadn't been blue since the day she was born. The people of the vault stared at them. And they stared back. Separated by generations, ideologies, even language, but connected by Earth. By loss. By the sense that the world they had stepped into was the same, but no longer broken. Johnny watched it happen from a ridge overlooking Lancaster. At first, he felt awe. Then grief. Then something else. Resolve. Because the cost of every one of those lives, their loss, their pain, their return, was branded into him now. Not metaphorically. Not symbolically. In blood. In soul. In every breath he drew into lungs that had tasted a dead world. The multiverse had taken them. He had brought them back. And now they were his responsibility. He looked at the sky, not to the stars, but through them. Never again, he whispered. Not just a vow, a law. Because now Earth lived again, past and future hand in hand. And this time, no one would take it from them. And this time, it wasn't because of power. It wasn't because of ships, weapons, governments, or gods. It wasn't because of unity, or dominion, or fate. It was because one boy remembered. He remembered Earth not just as a planet, but as home. He remembered the stories whispered in dim bald lights. The weight of names etched into the walls of the forgotten. The quiet scream of a planet left to die. He remembered loss. And he remembered that humanity, real humanity, was never meant to conquer the stars to escape itself. It was meant to carry its soul into them. Vault 717 now stands like a monument. Not of failure, but of survival. Around it, a city rises, not a replica of what was, but a rebirth of what could be. Lancaster, new and old, thrives again. In orbit, the armillary glows silently. It no longer tears through timelines. It anchors them now, protects them, holds Earth like a memory that refuses to fade. The multiverse may still burn in parts unseen, but Earth is whole. Johnny Vanjik, the boy who walked alone across a dead world, now stands at the center of a restored one. And overhead, the stars shine down, not as escape routes, not as threats, but as witnesses. Humanity has won once again, because it remembered who it was. And it chose to live.